Okay, let's move forward, guys. I mean, Councillor, Mayor Dahl. We have quorum. Let's start. Mayor Dahl?
Item 13.
You moved item 13. May I have someone second it?
No, if we didn't move it, he brought it forward.
Oh, you brought it forward, Councillor?
No, that's already was already brought forward, 15 and 13.
Yeah,
so and I did pull it, so I'm happy to put that on the floor.
Councillor Puri, Mayor Dahl.
Thank you. And for those of you who hung out for the Aurora Soccer Club lease, I'm completely in favor of the lease, Madam Chair, but I wish to put an amendment on the floor that we simply enter into a 5-year agreement at this point, and if someone will second that amendment, I'll be happy to speak to it.
Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I think our thanks to the Aurora Soccer Club for hanging on, because I know they've been on month to month for quite a while, and it's unfortunately, or the reality is that the issue is entirely within our walls, and we need to do some processes to clean that up to be more responsive to these groups. We have, and Mr. Downey can probably help with the final numbers, but we have a number of leases that the town enters into. And my concern is that we look at addressing them one by one. I would rather see a lot of that lease management rolled into one, not one super lease, but into one, we bring them up on a regular basis. So I'm suggesting that if we do a 10 and then 2 5s, it puts us too far out in terms of managing our leases effectively. So what I would rather see is that, with respect to my amendment, is that we enter into a 5-year lease with the soccer club. It gives them some of the visibility that they deserve. And I'm not saying that we would not renew a lease, but I think we need to look at that lease. I think we need to look at, as an example, the lease for the Aurora Factory Theatre is coming up, I believe, Mr. Downey, is that correct? He's nodding his head. And there's other ones. So I think we should look at those all together, and I think that will give us the opportunity, and maybe we'll look at through the Financial Advisory Committee, or maybe we look at that through another group. But that would be my I'm not sure if that's, I guess that's an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dahl. Would anyone like to speak to the amendment? Who's speaking to the amendment?
Could the clerk please read back the amendment?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I believe the amendment would read that the second clause be amended to read that the mayor and town clerk be authorized to execute a lease agreement for 5 years, including any and all documents and ancillary agreements required to give effect to the same, between the town of Aurora and the Aurora Soccer Club for the lease of Highland Park.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Puri.
So I don't have a problem with Mr. Mayor's rationale. I think it makes sense. If we don't assign a dedicated date, in my opinion, when the Aurora Factory Theatre comes up, we won't have a reference point that we can look at to say, I want everything set at, maybe it's January 1st, 2021, something to that effect, just so that we know exactly what the day is, and moving forward over the next, 5 or 6 years, we'll set everything to that exact date. I think is a fair way, but I agree with Mr. Mayor, it would probably be an easier way to go moving forward.
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm just wondering if perhaps we could add a clause in the same amendment, if that would be acceptable to Council, that we direct the CAO to report back to us as to when we could actually start a process to look at this, so that we're not all of a sudden it's January 2021 and the Aurora Soccer Club is back on a month-to-month lease. So I think perhaps if we could have the CAO report back to us, I think probably within a 6-month period, to say, here's when we can come up, here's when we can look at these leases, here's a schedule. I think would, through you to the CAO, do you think, like sometime June, July would be an acceptable time for you to put that together, given that you're new?
Perfect. Thank you very much. That sounds appropriate to me.
I'm not sure, Councillor.
You're fine with that. So basically, Mr. Clerk, basically we've added another amendment to this that is asking that the CAO come back and report to us on a process to ensure that leases are renewed automatically and understood. That's Councillor. Everyone understands that's been seconded. Anyone speaking to the motions? Councillor Gardner? To the amendments?
If I might suggest a slightly different wording, not renewed automatically, but renewed in a timely, up for discussion of renewal in a timely fashion.
Perfect. That's good. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just trying to get an idea of what we have a number of leases. So through you, Madam Chair, I'm thinking off the top of my head, we have the Bubble. Is that on a lease? Theater, Cultural Center. What else would we have? Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps Mr. Downey could just give a summation for Council's consideration.
Mr. Downey, do you have that off the top of your head?
Wow, I'll try, just to give you some idea. So, addition to those, Pine Tree Potters, Community Tennis Club, Lawn Bowling Club, Hydro, for hydro corridors. I believe we have one with minor hockey for the use of the space in the community center. Snack bars, the pro shops, hydro building, thank you, Dan. Those are the ones off the top of my head. So probably at least a dozen, I would say.
So if I may, Madam Chair, if I understand, Mr. Mayor, you want to put sort of everything under one sort of umbrella so we're not moving forward. If I could just get a gist of why we're shortening this lease.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Madam
explain
Chair.
that.
Fair question, Mr. Deputy Mayor. No, what I'm thinking is that we need to be, I think, well aware of all the leases we have. I mean, one of the issues was, and this is certainly no slight to our legal department, but I know that the lease for the Aurora Soccer Club was held up in legal for a while. They're pretty busy. I think we just need a better process to handle all our leases. And that's why I'm thinking at this point, if we have a 5-year lease, that will let us, I think, will let us bring all our leases into a bit more conformity and just a better process to handle it, that's all.
Mr. Mayor, and I really have no issue with that, but if we have a number of leases that are 10, 15 years, then doing it for 5 years is of no use, because are we not waiting till we gather all them all at the same time and then moving forward is okay, so it would almost be that off from here on in, we would renew leases at 5-year terms until we've got them under.
May I make Mr. Councilor Abel?
Go ahead.
Sarah, did you want to?
Hit the button. No training. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd suggest that if council will allow, I'll take back the whole list with the expiry dates and come up with a strategy to get them all in sync, so that, and it may be that there's 2 different sync dates. They don't necessarily even have to be on the same sync date. I think the intent of the pause is to make sure that we're approaching all leases in a consistent manner and trying to be trying to do the same thing with all of our leases, so that we're not accused of handling one this way and another one a different way and different terms. And so if you allow us a little bit of time, I'll come back with a rough plan as to how we would do that well before the 6 months, so you have an idea of what I think the mandate I'm being given.
Thank you. I just don't want to send the wrong message that we singled out the soccer club on 5 years when everyone else is at a considerably longer time, unless we make that communication clear to them. I'm sort of,
Councilor
they're the longest running agreement we've got, and if we've been doing it for 10 years, we should continue doing it for 10 years, is my thought. So I just want to be clear on why I would support 5 years with no explanation to them.
Thank you, Councilor Abel. Good point. Councilor Thompson? So, okay, just one moment, please.
Thank you. If I might, Madam Chair, the amendment on the floor right now is to include a clause that says the CIO report back to Council within 6 months on options for a process to better manage leases and other such agreements. That's the amendment that we're debating right now.
Okay, to the amendment, the last amendment, the clerk just spoke, repeated. Any other comments to that? All in favor for that? Opposed, motion carries. Back to the original motion with the amendment of, no? Speaking to the amendment. Speaking to the amendment. Councillor Abel, Councillor Thompson.
If I could, Madam Chair, if the CAO comes back with his report and he indicates that apart from the 5-year lease to the Aurora Soccer Club, we're waiting at least 10 years until all the other ones come in line, could I recommend that we would then extend another term 5 years to them? If that was the finding of the, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize, I was out of the room for a period of time. So I just wanted to clarify what the amendment is. Staff had recommended a 10-year lease with 2 5-year renewal options. Is the amendment just proposing 1 5-year term and no renewal options, or is it 5 and 2 5s?
Mayor Duff, you can speak to your amendment.
My amendment, Councillor Thompson, is that we go with 1 5-year term at this point, and to give the CAO an opportunity to look at all our leases and to work on conformity of our leases. I have no issue in terms of the longevity for the Aurora Soccer Club. I think a 5-year will give them the visibility they need in terms of planning their business, and give us the time we need, I think, to bring everything in sync.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. And I don't know if conversation has been had with them or not. I guess I would think that if I was in a property and I only had a 5-year lease, that may impact my decisions about whether I'm going to do any renovations to the clubhouse or not, because I may not have the property for extended period of time. You know, depending on how long it takes us to come back to them and does it impact future planning? I mean, if a decision is not made upon extending their lease or renewing their lease for a few years, well, as we heard, they have weddings. People typically book their wedding a year in advance. So there is the potential for impact. But I'm curious to know whether they have any plans. So perhaps through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, are you aware of the soccer club, whether or not they have any plans for renovations, additions, constructions, anything they want to do with that property over the next 5 years?
Mr. Downey?
Through Madam Chair, I'm not aware of any of those requests.
I think, and just for myself, I would seek out the soccer club, just to be clear. I get the intent to try and have some conformity and review it and stuff, but there is the potential for impact. I think of a business. A retail business isn't going to go in and set up with a 5-year lease because, one, it's nearly impossible for them to get a return on any of the leasehold improvements or so forth. So, it would be good to get a sense of what their future plans are, what that impact may or may not be. Now, granted, if our new CAO is able to come back in 6 months and address it, and we could add on to it then, maybe that's a simple solution and stuff, but I'm a little concerned at what the potential impact is for the soccer club by altering the term of the lease.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other comments on this item? On the amendment, my apologies. Okay, so we're voting on the amendment. Just to be clear, can the clerk repeat it one more time? I just want to make sure we're all voting on this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To make this easy, I'll give you what the effect of the amendment is. If you vote on this amendment, the second clause of the main motion will read that the mayor and town clerk be authorized to execute a lease agreement for 5 years, including any and all documents and ancillary agreements, etc. So it'll insert the words for 5 years after lease agreement in the second clause, which is on your screen.
Thank you. So if we can, Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a bit curious, what harm would it be for us to add that there is a renewal 5 years, 5 years? If we're just looking at 5-year stints, if we just put it in there, at least it gives the club as Councillor Thompson mentioned, that it gives them a little bit of assurance that there is that renewal there that we're giving them. So just to have that in there, I don't see what it doesn't. I don't really think it affects trying to sync everything and the work of the CAO. So. Mr. CAO, if you could, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Maracas. We're talking about renewals, so Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. normally those types of renewal clauses are for the benefit of both parties, so either party could decide that there was another use. I don't know what the terminology is that's proposed by the renewal, but regardless of that, I would take the general direction without having to get it in the motion that the intent is to firm this all up in the next year, to be very generous and to be back and addressing, the review of the leases would have to address those kinds of concerns anyway, especially as it relates to community groups, which are always looking, as has been stated, long-term. So I would factor that into the renewal and come forward with a plan.
Councillor Perry, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Initially, I was in favor of it because I thought we were trying to wrap everything into one process, one policy, so that we move forward. And if we deferred it for 5 years, we'll have maybe another 4 or 5 agreements that we could roll in. Maybe another 5 years, we could roll in a few more. But this process, I don't see what the point of doing it every... I'm struggling with why 5 years. If Mr. CAO is able to bring us a report in 6 months, I would much rather keep this in our term of council where we know that, or at least for me, I know that I'd like to support the ASC and help them retain the building right now and work in that building. It makes sense for us to keep it in our term, maybe put it either to a 2-month, or sorry, a 2-year, or even continue going month to month, because I doubt that we're going to kick them out. I think there's more than enough time for us to work on this in the short term, and to come back in a year and a half, 2 years, and have something already in place that'll work better for everybody while we keep it in the same term of council.
Councillor Abel, Thompson, and Gardner. To the amendment. Councillor Abel.
To the amendment, just for 1 5-year term, I'm struggling with that more and more. Because based on what Mr. Downey has said, there's a dozen other ones. I think better we give 10 years on this and then say a notice of motion or direct our CAO or staff to come forward with a plan to give an idea of all those, because I'm certain that the soccer club wouldn't be the last one. Even if it was, it wouldn't be troublesome for me. They have, as I've said before, they're long-standing. For long-term business plans, if they want to finance any sort of renovation, they would have to establish to any finance company that they have a fair and lengthy lease. And that's going to stymie anything that they were going to put forward in the next 5 years. I think it just puts a halt to anything progressing for them. The fact that we waited and we got this on very quickly, and now we brought it up at General Committee without any discussion, also concerns me as well. I don't think that's good corporate for us. But this lease was added on, was brought forward without any discussion with the soccer club. I would have at least liked for you to pass it by, or staff to say, you know what, we're thinking along here. So if we put 5 years on, they had that conversation, but they're not able to do that at this time. And I would, at the very least, want a 10-year lease, just as it's recommended here. So I think I'm not going to support just a 5-year lease at this time, Mr. Mayor. Although I fully appreciate what you're trying to do, and I'm all for it based on the number of leases we have, but I think that's something separate, and we can deal with it with the soccer community as well, with all the other ones that we have, because I know there's lots of them out there that are longer than 5 years at this time.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, this is, to me, if I was, in the Aurora Soccer Club and they had delegated this evening, I mean, this is a substantive change. And so I think that given that it's just GC and, that we have a week to cancel, I think it would have been more appropriate to bring forward that kind of recommendation next week, maybe have some conversation and suggest it, but then reach out to the soccer club, have those conversations. They were at the podium and they could have responded to those kind of things. They're not being given any opportunity at this point in time to give some feedback or provide some thoughts to put some context around the decision. And I understand from an administrative perspective the value in it, but I just think that I can't support it right now because it's a substantive change, and there's no opportunity right now to really assess the value in it or to reach out to what's been a long-standing partner of ours. And so I think, for this evening, I will vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner, did you want to speak? I thought she had her hand up.
I'm having trouble with all of this because, to my mind, we don't have enough information in front of us. We don't have the terms of the lease. We don't have the terms of the past leases. And I've been around this table when this has been discussed many times. And yes, they're a partner, and yes, we want them, or I want them to stay on their property. But my understanding was the last time around that they were renting out the clubhouse and using the money for their own benefit, and that the last lease, that wasn't to happen. They were only to use it for their own use. So I'm a little bit confused, and I would really like to see the lease agreements, the one going forward and the ones past. And yes, have some conversation with the club and see what their plans are. It's a great initiative. I'm not even sure, I thought that, the land, I'm not even sure, through Madam Chair, to Mr. Downey, does the land belong to the town of Aurora? The town of Aurora helped form the field. The club built the clubhouse and maintains the field. I'm not even sure. Is that the parameter of this? And how
Mr.
did
Downey?
how did it happen?
But
They're the only club that I know of in town that is on town land with a clubhouse built on it.
Councillor Garber, I appreciate your comments, but we're talking to the 5-year change
Yes, I know that, but
amendment.
how can we really even know if it should be month to month or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years if we don't know what the terms of the lease is?
True.
So just
Good
in
point.
principle, I'm going to have to vote against it because I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Kim?
Just quickly, whether we approve this or not approve this, we know that this can come back next week in council for discussion after a week of consultation with the soccer club. I'm just throwing this out there, would it be prudent to not approve this and have the dialogue with the ASC and then have another report back at a future GC? Would that be more prudent than making a hasty decision or bringing back something next week?
That's a good question. Mr. Clerk, your perspective on that? And what we should
Thank
do?
you. Through Madam Chair, and if I might seek clarification, it sounds like Councillor Kim wants to defer consideration of this matter until a future GC?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
So a motion to defer a matter is always in order, but that's it. Well, no, I would actually suggest, yes, however, a motion to defer would apply to the full motion, the full matter, including the amendment. So if a motion to defer were passed, it would come back to a future GC, assuming you passed it, with that amendment still pending.
I would second that motion if Councillor Kim wants to make it.
Councillor Kim?
Yes, I'd like to put that motion in.
To defer this to a
To
future
defer.
GC?
Yes.
Second by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner?
As I said, the Aurora Youth Soccer Club, the Aurora Soccer Club keeps men
Just
and
one
women.
moment, Councillor Gardner, just 1 second.
Yes, it is. No, they're both debatable.
You guys changed it.
Changed it last council.
Thank you for the clarification.
So I would like this council to have all of the information in front of it with respect to past leases. We don't have the current lease attached to this report. We don't know what the club would think about a 5 or a 10 or a 20. I believe we need as a council to be more informed and to have a proper discussion around the whole idea of one sport group having a clubhouse on Aurora land, because another group has just asked us for the same thing. I think we need to know what we're talking about and make the decision with all the information.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. I think Councillor Marcus, I believe I saw the motion to defer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think everyone pretty much knows what I'm going to say here is I'm not in favor of deferring this. I think we can just easily make a decision, and I think if we ask staff, they could probably, either email us the agreements that we can look at, during a week's time and take a look at those and have that sober second thought, which is what's available to us and council next week. If someone decides to change their mind, they could at that time after looking at the agreement. So, I'm comfortable moving forward right now. Would I like to look more in depth in the agreements? Sure. But my understanding is after speaking to the director is that the agreement is in essence the same agreement that was the previous one. So I'm quite comfortable moving forward, and so I won't be in favor of deferral.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm against the deferral for different reasons. If the intent of the deferral is to spend 2 weeks talking to an organization to see if they're on board with something, we've got council next week. In that 1 week period, I think it's very easy to have that discussion. I have some faith in our legal department as well to review agreements, to review leases, and to make sure that they're in the town's best interest. I also have faith in prior councils having, reviewed these types of items. Again, like Councillor Marcus, I'm not opposed to reviewing it. I just don't think it should be holding up the process.
Thank you, Councillor Perry, and I believe Councillor Thompson and Abel.
I'm against the referral for the same reasons that Councillor Perry stated. I think that the due diligence or the inquiries can be done in the next 7 days as opposed to the next 14. Let's just move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Abel.
I'll go along the same train. If any councillor wishes to review with our staff, they've got a whole week to review it. If there's any concerns, they can bring it forward. That's part of our job, is to do our due diligence and be prepared.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, all in favor of the deferral? Against? Motion fails. So back to the motion as amended. Back to the amendment. Voting on the amendment. Councillor Tom?
Thank you. The previous thing, the amendment to the amendment we voted on, which was have the CAO come back with a report, is that dependent on this amendment passing? It's an amendment to this amendment, or is it an amendment to the main motion? Because I'd like that, I don't like this.
Councillor
Can we have some
Tom, we
comments?
already approved the...
No,
Yeah.
the amendment was to this amendment, not to the main motion. So if we vote this down,
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, absolutely. If you now defeat this amendment, that other amendment, which was technically a sub-amendment, will die, because you can't have two amendments on the floor, but you can have a sub-amendment.
Okay, so we all know what we're voting for. Any other questions? Voting on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. Amendment fails.
I'd like to put that other sub-amendment back on the table.
Let's count that
Seconded.
again. I voted. Sorry, Councillor Perry?
I'll put that sub-amendment back on the table.
Councillor Tom, perfect. Any questions, comments? The supplement, the amendment to the motion? Go ahead. Absolutely. Clerk to read, the clerk's going to be
Thank
reading
you.
out the...
the following clause, the amendment on the floor will read that the following clause be added to the main motion, that the CAO be directed to report back to council within 6 months on options to manage leases and options and processes to manage other leases and other such agreements.
All clear? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Main motion as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, all done. Let's move back to the top. Item number 3, moved by Councillor Thompson. Item number 3. May I have a seconder? Or how would you move that, Councillor Thompson?
It's been so long, just a second. I believe this one also is to, this one's to receive for information, and I'll move the recommendation as is.
Move recommendation as is. May I have someone second? Mayor Dahl? Councillor Thompson?
I want to start with the third clause. So through you, Madam Chair, to, I don't know if it's Mr. Simonovskis, probably Mr. Simonovskis, but Mr. Simonovskis, we went through the process of a solar panel project for the SARC. I think we first started it in 2011. It is now 2016. I've seen a few reports every once in a while. What's the status of that solar project to go on top of the SARC?
Certainly through you, Madam Chair, and maybe the solicitor would like to add a little bit, but we do have an agreement either signed and in place or very short to happen. And if that's the case, then we're then proceeding to installation, which will probably happen this spring once the ice is off the roof, if the winter season is over.
So we have confirmation that we're going ahead. All is in we've gotten approval from all of the authorities, and it will happen. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
That's good news. My concern about starting another project was the time that it's taken for us to move through the last one, and I really didn't want to see us begin another project without having some sort of conclusion to the last one, and see this one sort of spin about. So I appreciate that feedback. My second question really has to do with regards to the leisure complex, and you've identified in here some different things that have happened through the leisure complex. Obviously we've had some committees, we've had constant conversation around continual improvement. Is there still a mechanism by which feedback is happening for continual improvement on some of the ideas that were expressed, not just the big budget items, but the lesser ones? Things like lockers, things like more benches in the change room. And where I'm going with that is that, over the holidays, I was using Club Aurora, and, we still have a problem in that main change room whereby the one bench can really only accommodate 3 grown men after that, And so, you have a whole bunch of people at sometimes coming in there, and some of them are standing to get changed, and it's still a bit of an issue. And from my perspective, there's about 45, 50 lockers in there. I've never seen them more than half full. And I know I made the comment previously, and I just said, can we monitor it? Every once in a while have staff looking into, do we ever get to a point where we're utilizing all the lockers or not? Because I really think in that one particular change room, a second bench is needed because, it's very awkward for someone to come out of the shower and there's no place to sit, and you don't want to squeeze in between 2 people, and so you're forced to stand. And when I see a lot of vacant lockers, I think to myself, well, are we using all the lockers that are in there? And from my perspective, we're not, but I'm not there every single day. So I guess my question through you, Madam Chair, to, I assume, Mr. Simonovskis, are we monitoring these things still? These ideas and suggestions that came out of the committees about ways to improve the facilities, are we still seeking, and looking at that, engaging about these changes, or have we stopped?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are still open to suggestions, and staff are always looking for opportunities to improve the experience within that facility from a facilities perspective. And I'm sure Mr. Downey's staff from an operations and program delivery program are also open-minded. We do get, I have spoken with some of the councils over the holiday, and, we have activated the rear door, and any comments or suggestions that any of you have, or any public members have, please forward them to us. If there are things that we can implement, based on an obvious operational improvement, we'd be glad to do that. Obviously, the experience is important to us, as it is to the community. Things that might require a little more direction, or that have a larger price tag, I would obviously bring forward to this council for consideration. Your suggestion on the lockers and the benches, I'd be happy to review what's happening in that facility. We've been operating almost a year now, coming this spring. And we can definitely, talk to staff about what they see during the different periods of the day, and what kind of activities going on, and definitely look at, removing some lockers, adding a bench.
Great. I'm glad to hear that we're still continually assessing and looking for ways to improve the facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Councillor Gartner, Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you'll stop me if I'm out of order. Following on the comments through to Mr. Simonovskis. Mr. Simonovskis, the users are also expecting cubbies. I think they were promised cubbies. I think we had a discussion about cubbies. Little boxes where they can put their things, because right now they're putting some things on the equipment, and it's really not appropriate.
Mr. Simonovskis?
Certainly through you, Madam Chair, I can look into that. I know we had spoken about moving or relocating a series of cubbies that are located on the west end of the hallway, that we can separate into two sections and move part of that over to that sort of the entrance area to the spin, or the yoga studio and the gym part. So I'll look into that, but I know we did talk about that in the field with the staff, and we'll see where we are with that.
Thank you. And unfortunately, there has been some theft in the men's fitness change room, including out of someone's locker. So people are hesitant even, they would like to have things as close to where they exercise as possible. So that would be great. The other thing I noticed when I was over on the weekend, there was a tournament there. I'm not sure, perhaps Mr. Downey knows, Tigers tournament. Everybody was using that tiny little fitness change room as a washroom, the men's and the women's. But we do have public washrooms upstairs. And I don't think it's fair to the users that they would be having all of these people, visitors, in from tournaments, coming into, as Councillor Thompson said, that tiny change room. So I think it's been mentioned before, can there be signage put so that people know that the public washroom is upstairs?
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Simonovskis, I think we did speak about this.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, and I'll verify where we are with that if it hasn't been done already.
It has not.
Okay, so then I'll follow up with staff on that as well.
And also through you, Madam Chair, or to maybe the comment is to Mr. Downey, reception staff needs to direct people upstairs.
Mr. Downey, if you wanted to comment.
Through you, Madam Chair, there's also public washrooms in the rink. So
There were a lot of people using that little fitness. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to know that about the ring. And maybe I was going to save it till the Accessibility Advisory Committee, but I think this is a concern that all of council should have. So I'll just wait till I have everybody's attention. It is noted on that fitness change room that it is accessible. It is not accessible. There is no door opener on the men's or the women's. And in fact, there's no door opener upstairs in either of the washrooms. I do not think that as a town we can say that we have an accessible washroom. And it's signed that way now. I don't believe we can say that. I don't think the AODA would be happy. I don't think anybody with a handicap would be happy, and it needs to be changed.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. I don't know if staff wants to comment on that now, but we should investigate if not, and Just confirm.
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, we have an AODA staff involved in the design and the implementation of the facility, so I will definitely consult staff to see where we are and what, as far as compliance is concerned, it doesn't require that every bathroom or every area be accessible. So what I'll do is find out where we are with compliance, and if there are any issues, I'll bring that back in the form of a memo. If there aren't any issues, maybe if I could suggest, I'll just email council to say everything is actually compliant.
And thank you. As a follow-up, can you tell me if any washroom in the Aurora Family Leisure Complex has an automatic door opener on it?
Through you, Madam Chair, the family change room at the pool end has an automatic opener on it. That one I know for sure.
Thank you. That's the far northeast part of the building.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question, I guess, through you to Mr. Downey, as far as the use of the gymnasium. And I don't really want to get into this too much, but I was there on the weekend. Actually, I'm there almost every day now, ever since Timberlane closed. But I finished a bit early. Just wanted to go into the gymnasium. No one's in there. No activities happening. There's nothing in use. Doors are locked. I just wanted to go in there and just shoot some hoops. And I'm wondering, why isn't it open for people just to kind of go in and use it at their pleasure, as long as there's nothing happening or scheduled at that time?
Mr. Downey, are you aware?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's actually a permitted facility. So if council wishes to provide drop-in hours for the general public, we're more than happy to do that. We'd more than likely have to staff it. We don't treat it any differently than if you wanted to go in and swim. You're not permitted to do that or skate in the ice. So we look at it as a permitted facility, which is the reason that when it isn't programmed or we do not have any drop-in hours associated primarily with youth, it's locked and not manned.
I guess just a comment. I guess maybe I'll bring something or speak to you later about it. I just think that if it's not being in use, it's not being permitted. I mean, some people might want to go in there and do some wind sprints, or just use it, whatever. If it's not being in use, why not, right? Just allow someone to go in there and do what they want, as long as they're not harming anything. So, I mean, I'll have that discussion with you, and if it's something that we need to bring up at the table to open it up, then I'd more than glad like to bring that forward.
Thank you. Councilor Abel, Thompson, and Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I know that it speaks to the facility projects, and I appreciate the update, but we seem to be going back into what I might consider new business. So I did ask Mr. Simonauskas about the possibility of a second coat rack, because the numbers at New Year's, because everyone doing the resolution, Timberlane closing, there is a lot more people there, and the coat rack holds 15. There's plenty more than that. I do appreciate that you do have coat racks and people are finding them in the bins, as Councillor Gardner spoke. That fills up fairly quick, but that's how when I change, I bring my stuff and put it in the bin. I don't put it in the lockers. I share Councillor Thompson's and agree with his comment that a lot of those lockers are not being used, and we are in dire need of a second bench. It is awfully personal in there, and I would also restate, and there's something that Councillor Gardner and I talked about, putting washrooms in that alcove when you enter in. Most public facilities, when you enter, have a washroom near the entrance where most people and traffic are, so would spill from the rink and from the exercise, and the youth coming in and using the facility. As it is now, and I was there at the game day because my neighbor was playing, and it's very comfortable for all the parents to wait in the lobby, which is great, but their tendency to go to a washroom is not to go into that cold and find a washroom. They're naturally invited to come through, and that's where we have an issue. They have to wander around looking for the public washrooms, and that doesn't make sense to me. It should be right at the doors. So I'm hoping, perhaps, Council, we would get a notice of motion or reevaluate it, but that alcove is underutilized, and it would make a perfect space for public washrooms when people come walking in. and it should be a handicap prominent so people understand and are easily accessible. So those are my comments. We still have follow-up, and we should be diligent. I feel that we could be doing a bit more at this stage. But the coat racks, I think, right off the bat, one coat rack isn't good. And I think when staff start telling people where else some nooks are to put their coats, our members will probably appreciate it, because there is room for a few coats in the fitness room. I'm sure there is in the exercise room. So those are, you know, I think for the winter months we should accommodate.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Thompson, then Puri and Kim. We spoke once. On my apologies, Councillor Puri and Councillor Kim.
You know, I've got a problem with the color of the paint in the facility. Could we please change that? I don't like the hue of the color. I'd just like to bring everybody back to the point that what we're discussing right now is the increase in fees, as well as the Solar Fit program. There is a separate committee that looks at any deficiencies with the building. Now is not the time to be discussing that. It's not part of what we're supposed to be doing right now. I'd like to call the question.
Now, Councillor Tom and Kim did have their hand up previous to that.
Actually, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Kim. Okay, we got a vote. My apologies. I recognized it. Let's all vote. Can't. We're voting on calling the vote. All in favor to call question? Opposed? Motion fails.
No.
I mean, passes.
So now you have to call the vote on the main motion.
So let's call the vote on the actual item that's in front of us, which is to be received for information. All in favor? All in favor? Hands up. All in favor? Opposed? I think motion carries. Move on.
You do have to make.
It's motion carries. Item number 4, which was brought forward by Councillor Tom. Councillor Tom?
Thanks, and I'll move it forward as written.
May I have a seconder for that? Mayor Da?
So
Councillor
I just
Tom?
had, I guess, just to express an idea, you know, this report talks about a pilot project. I support the pilot project, and just so I make sure I'm clear, and I think I am, that it's for the parking and also for left-hand restriction turning at peak hours. Is that not correct? Or is that coming in a separate report? So this is just the parking. It is mentioned in the report, so I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Certainly through you, Madam Chair, it is two parts. So the only reason why I've mentioned the left turn parking in the report is at some point in time we're expecting the region to provide some comment on both this project and the left turn restrictions. And I suspect they'll be doing them at the same time. So I just want council to be aware that there's two things happening, but this is specifically for that corridor on Yonge Street.
Okay, so this pilot project will be sent to the region. The report will be sent to the region, as will the pilot project on left turns, and they'll both come back at the same time. That's what you're saying. So this is just the parking.
Correct, and that's my hope. The region will respond at the same time.
Okay, that's fine. So I guess my only comment would be I support at least finding out if this is feasible and doing a pilot project. But my one comment at this point, and I suppose I can see what other members of council will say to this, and you know I'm happy to move forward with it at least till next week, is just the length of time. So I know Barrie has a similar thing on their main street. I don't even know what their main street's called, but they have temporary structures that they put out on the sidewalks, temporary sidewalks, and it's during the summer months, and it's quite popular. I'm not saying that couldn't be done here, but I guess my only comment is, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. I'm still in support of this as of right now, but is June to October too long for a pilot project? Is it better to try July, August? That way the scope is a bit smaller, but I don't know. I mean, that's just a comment, not a question. So I'm happy to support it as it is, but perhaps we could think about maybe making it smaller, and if there's support for that, I would look at that. But if there isn't, I'm happy to support it the way it is.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Perry?
So, like Councillor Tom, Barrie's a great example, Newmark's a great example. This is something I've been harping on for the last 4 or 5 years. The opportunity to expand the sidewalks, to add seating for businesses through the use of wooden sidewalk extensions. I'm not looking for an answer now. It would be great if it could be implemented in some fashion, some capacity through the design phases once that report comes back to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
The concept, going back to a concept plan, I think is good. I think, we've talked about it many times and stuff. The one challenge I'm having really is just the report itself. A year ago, when we passed the motion, we asked for a feasibility, and I was sort of expecting more information in the report as it stands. To me, there's no real information, no factual evidence in the report to have me a better sense of it. So through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Simonauskas. Mr. Simonauskas, what is the goal of this pilot project? What's the intention?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair, what I would, rather than respond directly to that question, I would rather refer to the original motion, which speaks to some of the whereases, and if I may ask Mayor Daw to sort of speak to the intent.
Oh, Mayor Daw.
Thank you. The intent is to look at a different way of creating what I would call a people-friendly environment through our downtown core. In my opinion, it goes hand in hand with all the discussions we've had over the last many years with respect to downtown revitalization. It's a way, I think, to create a better environment. When I was down in the FCM conference a year ago, June, in Niagara Falls, one of the tours I took was old Niagara Falls, and they had done that with a street that was 4 lanes, and they'd reduced that to 2 lanes and created rollover curbs with respect to taking that 1 lane that would have been temporary parking, I guess, and made that a permanent parking area. It totally changed the streetscape. Newmarket has that. No, Newmarket is a slightly different situation in that it's not their main, it's Main Street, but it's not their main thoroughfare. But Barrie has it, and that's Dunlop Street. Barrie does it. Midland does it. Markham has just finished doing that on Highway 48 through Markham, so that is their main drag, if you will, and very similar to what we have on Yonge Street. When I was thinking of the plan, I went and talked to a number of businesses, because if we go back to, I guess, October of 2014, when we had an initial meeting for the BIA, the Business Improvement Area, and Ron Palmer, who is a principal with the Planning Partnership, came up. Now, the Planning Partnership was the architect behind the Promenade Plan. And he was very keen on the parking plan, and certainly encouraged me to go forward with it. His comment on parking was it's not so much an issue as a perceived issue, and the perception is that if I can't park right in front of Mary's Flowers or Mac Fleming to get my products, there's a parking problem. Yet people will walk much farther if they go up to Upper Canada Mall and park out in the outskirts of the parking lot. So it's a perception. So part of this, I think, speaks to taking away some of that perception. Certainly all the businesses that I've spoken to are in favor of this because they see it as an opportunity to increase their store presence and perhaps with respect to some of the other areas, as Councillor Perry has mentioned, an opportunity to maybe do a sidewalk extension and do a bit of an outdoor patio. It also, I think, it speaks to the Promenade Plan, and Mr. Rumuno can certainly talk to that. I think it speaks to the Promenade Plan in terms of creating that new streetscape. One of the people I talked to was Jill Foster, the CEO at the library, and she commented that she thought it was a great idea because her concern or her comment was walking. She walks to the library. She either walks to the library or walks home on a regular basis as she gets some exercise. She says it's not a friendly place to walk. If I don't enjoy parking on Yonge Street out in front of the library because people go scooting up there. So I think if we look at that, if we take that opportunity to create, it's a very long-winded answer, and I apologize, but if we take this opportunity and create a parking area that's dedicated to parking, I think it changes the streetscape. I think it slows down some of the traffic. It improves the safety in the area. And I think it also improves the flow through. And I think to Councillor Thomas' point in terms of the length, I think one of the benefits of moving over some of that is that traffic typically goes down. Traffic volume typically goes down in July and August. It starts to peak back up in September. So, I mean, certainly one of the issues that we'll have to look at is infiltration into side streets. I don't believe it'll be a problem, but I'm not a traffic expert. I think some of that different seasonality will give us a bit of a handle on that. So I apologize if the answer is too long, sir.
No, I think that is good. To me, that's what should have been in the report in the first place. Like when I think of a feasibility, when we first said yes and bring this back, you have some information in the report about the intent, the hope, the goals, what you're trying to establish. Even some ballpark costs would have been good. I struggled with the report because other than providing a timeline, it really didn't speak to why we're doing this and what the potential benefits or outcome could be. And I think that's important. We're having this discussion around the table, but what about the resident who just picks up this report? What does it say to the resident? Not much. And I think that information needs to come out. Yes, there's a public open house. I mean, interestingly enough, that open house is going to happen, and then the open house happens late April, the report comes to us late May, but we're starting June 1st. Is this like the clear garbage bags where, what happens with that feedback where there's some concerns or questions? There's no time between the end of May and the start of June, the end of May when the report comes, and the June 1st proposed date to really address any concerns or do anything. So again, just going back to the fact that we've had a whole year to deal with this. Now it's come to us, and we're compressing the time cycle. And I heard earlier people were so concerned about moving quickly with a concept plan that went for 16 years that now I just think that I hope we've already done our due diligence and the businesses along Yonge Street are fully in support, because otherwise I think that we're going to be debating this in May.
Thank you. Councillor Maracas, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I read it, I share some of the same concerns Councillor Thompson has as far as the information. When I read it, and what I was expecting from when we dealt with this a year ago is we were looking for that feasibility on implementing something like this. So when I think of that, I'm looking for where will the traffic go? What will they use as a bypass? Has emergency services been contacted? What's their thoughts on this plan? Accessibility. Have we sent it to the accessibility committee and looked at what kind of access? How will that be dealt with? I don't see any of that in this report, and yet we're looking to approve implementing a pilot program. And Councillor Thompson mentioned earlier, we spent an hour on the cultural precinct discussing something that we haven't approved, and the residents are saying, hey, you haven't given us time to weigh in, and yet we're going to approve something, and they haven't weighed in on it yet. So I have concerns about that. In concept and in theory, it's great, but for me, at the end of the day, everyone knows, last year I looked at, let's have staff look at widening Industrial Parkway. For me, without us identifying a true bypass for Yonge Street, then I don't think anything that we do as far as a concept like this would work. Because the traffic's going to go somewhere. It's not going to disappear at the end of the day. And I hear, to make it people-friendly, I agree, it'd be great, but when I look at the drawings, things that I consider people-friendly is bike lanes. I don't see any bike lanes in this. That kind of, piques my curiosity. At the end of the day, I look at this drawing, and, no offense, but all I see is dedicated parking and chicanes along Yonge Street. That's my take. And so, without all that information, I wouldn't be able to support approving a pilot project at this time.
Thank you. I believe I saw Councillor Pure and then Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to choose my words carefully here. I'm typically not somebody who buys into airy-fairy notions of this is going to enhance public feeling more, enhancing walkability by putting these extensions of sidewalks out on the main strip to create additional parking. With that said, there has been, as much as this type of work can be scientific in nature, there has been studies performed by individuals like Richard Flora, which demonstrate that when people feel safe within a community, feel safe within a stretch of street, they're more likely to be on it. And there are different things that make people feel safe, aesthetics, but one of the major ones is proximity to traffic. And so what this does is it puts the traffic, I think, where it belongs, which is in the middle of the street. Anybody walking on the sidewalk can feel a little bit of comfort knowing that if any car comes in beside them, it's to park. It's not to drive quickly to try and beat a light because somebody's trying to turn left and they're slowing everybody down. So I think there'll be a benefit in that way. In my view, what we're looking for right now is a pilot project. We can have all the reports, all the studies done beforehand, but without actually seeing how people react to it, seeing how people use it, it's difficult to assess whether or not it's going to have value moving forward. And so I think that a pilot project on an initiative like this is much more concrete than any staff report or consultant report could ever be for myself. I'd rather see how it works, I'd rather see what the effects are, and then as a council we can decide how we're going to move forward. I don't want to put roadblocks, figurative roadblocks, in the way of moving forward on this project. I think there is benefit in trying something new, and I'll be in favor of it. I think it's a great initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Peary. Councillor Abel?
I'm all for giving the streets back to the pedestrians. I think it's a great idea. And I think we see that when we celebrate our fantastic street festival in June. It gives you a feeling that, hey, you know what? It's not about buses and rush hour and everything else going on. We really have the biggest challenge. I know we mentioned other streets. I was in Charlottetown. They bring out portable patios for restaurants. It's kind of cool. They put strategically a couple of cars before they put a patio, so that the car will hit the cars before they hit the patio. But we really have a transportation corridor. We have the regional responsibility for traffic. I've often said we should put a tunnel. I don't know if that's going to work.
Pilot tunnel?
A pilot tunnel. Very good. But, it's a beautiful street when you walk it and you see the people there. So we're restricting left-hand turn lanes because of the volume. I really feel that the feedback we're going to get are the people that are on Temperance and Victoria, because instinctively, when you get around it, you're going to move down Irwin, cut across, down Temperance, and pick it up at Kennedy. Coming north, you're going to do the same probably at Cousins and come up Garnett and Victoria and bypass, if you sense there is a congestion there. And then we have a rush hour traffic that we're going to try and solve that congestion by eliminating left-hand turn lanes. So that'll be interesting, funneling them into a single lane. But I'm all for sending out the message. It's too bad we didn't think like Unionville when they did their Main Street. They put a bypass around Kennedy. Brilliant. That creates we sort of have a bypass, so maybe the word will get out. If you're coming south, go down Industrial. If you're coming north, come up Industrial. So we'll deal with that with the GO station and all. That's another matter. But I'm all for trying it. Summertime makes sense to me, Mr. Mayor. We've talked about it long enough, and it's time to put a little action in there, and we'll get the response and feedback. We'll learn and go forward from there.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonoskis. I'm not sure if it was already spoken of before, but I don't see how this, I'm open to this plan because I can see how it can beautify the street, and it's always great to have a main thoroughfare be taken up by pedestrians and increasing foot traffic for the local businesses. I just want to ensure that the risk to traffic, to greater traffic congestion is not so great and onerous. And was this brought forward, Mr. Simonauskas, in terms of, I know Councillor Marakis sometime last year, sometime around the same time, had a left turn, wanted a no left turn during certain periods. I'm not sure how a single lane would work if someone were to be making a left turn. Like, is there any way that could be made in conjunction with this same pilot?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Certainly through a couple questions I heard there, Madam Chair. With regards to impacts to traffic, we have been, we've met with the region probably 4 times face-to-face, as well as a number of conversations over the telephone and through emails to try to garner their support and analysis to gain buy-in from the regional's perspective, because as mentioned in the report, Yonge Street is a connecting thoroughfare for the region's network. As much as it's a local street, from our perspective, it does form a very large transit connection for the region. So they have a different interest in the use of that corridor than we do. In actually one meeting where the mayor also attended with us to encourage more active support, the discussion moved to a pilot to allow us to study it. There is recognition that this is going to change the dynamic in that corridor, but not hamper its functionality in the short term. So the region was in support of a pilot, and then we would all learn to see what the implications of that change would be, and this summer was identified as an ideal time to do that testing. From a longer term perspective, the region has committed to doing analysis, and they will actually be here. They'll be invited to council for the council meeting of the second cycle of February to update us on their transportation master plan. And I encourage you to ask questions both on this and on the left turn restrictions, because we are seeking their input in that analysis. The analysis will be done with their modeling, with their network information, with their traffic predictions, so we need their support. And that's our opportunity to remind them of that commitment that they've made to us. My hope is that we will get some information from them through this year at some point in time, hopefully before the pilot is over. And then from there, we can decide and present to council what makes the most sense as a long-term solution. It may be what we do as a pilot is perfectly fine, or there may be other sort of modifications based on what we experience, both from the pilot and what the region predicts in their longer-term traffic forecasts for that corridor.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Simonauskas. So if you're saying that the left turn trial is not working, or is not going to happen with this trial for the single lane, is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, I did not answer that question through Madam Chair. That is correct. The region is not able to allow that change to happen without them completing some additional analysis. So we are waiting for them to confirm that. And I know Councillor Marakis and I had a meeting with the regional staff on that very point as well. So there's a lot of, we've had a lot of conversations with them, and again, that meeting in February will be the opportunity to remind them of these commitments and expectations.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think my conclusion would be I wouldn't be able to support this, just because if there's no, at any time of day, especially during rush hour, if someone's making a left turn, that just blocks that whole single lane on Yonge on both sides. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of residents coming to us saying, where's your common sense? So I don't think a pilot project such as this would be successful or even worthwhile unless it includes a left turn lane and includes a right turn lane. We have 2 lanes anyway, so if you're going to block off the right side anyway, I think the first 10 meters of the intersection for right turns for those who want to bypass and continue to go north or make the right, I think that would be the right way to go. So I don't think I'm going to support this trial run for now. Thank you.
Oh, Simonauskas,
If I may, through you, Madam
Sure.
Chair, just because it does influence the councillor's comments. This is this drawing which we have in the report is a conceptual drawing. I do have our traffic group looking at the traffic what configuration we need to manage traffic. And I can tell you just from looking at this conceptual plan, at the Wellington-Yonge intersection, those restrictions would not happen at the intersection. There would have to be a tapered lane where we actually have 4 travel lanes for a distance south of Wellington to accommodate that. The goal here isn't to congest the intersection. The goal is to manage the traffic as it transitions into that, that left turn, right turn, through fare activity at Yonge and Wellington. So this is a conceptual plan. We do need to consider those traffic flows, and we've met with the mayor on this as well to modify the program so that it actually and make sure that we have adequate capacity where it's critical, and do the calming where it's accommodated through the quieter parts of the street.
So that right lane close to the intersections would be still available?
Correct.
Thank you. I believe we have Councillor Marakis, Thompson, and Gardner. My apologies. So Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll get into a little bit about the left turn restriction motion. I mean, it does speak to it slightly in the report. Actually, through you, Madam Chair, maybe to Mr. Simnowski, I'm just curious how both of them ended up getting intertwined together.
Mr. Simnowski.
Certainly through you, Madam Chair. I've been trying to avoid that, but the challenge is that they affect each other somewhat. And the linking piece is the region's analysis. When they plan to do their traffic review, they're going to look at both impacts. And when they come to us with a recommendation as to how and when to do those left turn restrictions, it will have to consider any pilot results that we are able to generate. So I'm trying to keep them separate. They're 2 separate projects, definitely, but the region is that sort of connecting link, and that's where I'm basically trying to be transparent with how much information I have on both of those initiatives.
Sure. Thank you. And as a follow-up through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Simnowskis, the 2 of us sat down with the regional representative, traffic, I forget what his name was exactly, but we sat down and we discussed these, and we were there to discuss the left turn restrictions due to the fact that that was what council approved to implement the pilot project at the time. And from my memory, what I recall is that he mentioned to both of us that he would come before us in December, and we would look at implementing the pilot project for the left turn restrictions in sometime around March. Just, like for me, I'm just curious, last year, it's actually the same meeting we had, and I know that was a question, but I'll let you answer that in a second, but we had both motions before us. One was to do a feasibility study. One was to ask the region to implement the pilot project and go ahead with it, as long as they say okay. And here we are a year later, and the one that we asked as a council to implement and to try out is not in front of us. The one that we asked for a feasibility study is in front of us. And it has a date for approval and for implementation. And I don't understand where that direction came from to put this one ahead of the one that council directed to put ahead. So I guess I'm confused as to how this has happened. I heard from the region that they were fine with, coming forward and implementing that pilot project for the left turn restrictions in sometime in March, which would be ahead of this. And we could look at it. I don't believe that they should be intertwined. I don't know how they ever did become intertwined. I don't know who gave direction for it to become intertwined. They're both separate. Council never said for them to be combined. So I'm just confused at that part. And then, like I said before, I just have a lot of issues. I don't have enough information to approve ahead of time before we get all that information. So I'm still where I'm at.
Thank you, Councillor Marakis. We've got a couple more speakers, and we've got Councillor Gardner, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner, I don't think you spoke to this issue yet. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. I'm in favor of anything that might help Yonge Street. I'm in favor of giving this a go. Certainly doing the due diligence and the communications with the public and the business owners. I am concerned about the traffic congestion and the negative feedback, once again, from the residents. But through you to Mr. Simonovskis, to Councillor Thompson's point, the public open house, advertising the public open house begins late March and April. Is it possible to start that a little bit earlier to move up the schedule a little bit? Or is that timeline based on staff's workload?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can look at that and advance that. I'd be happy to modify the intent with this media program was to solicit as much information or feedback from that community as we possibly could, recognizing that it's a pilot and it's a temporary installation. But if there's any suggestions, or we can come back with additional information as to what acceleration we can do with regards to the communication. The communication is really reaching out to those businesses, engaging the chamber as a representative of that core, and basically demonstrating what it is we intend to do and when, and seeing what kind of feedback there is. I don't know if Mayor Dawn wants to comment, but I understand that there's a lot of positive energy around something like this with that business community, and my hope is that that positive energy materializes in support once we actually come forward with a plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, follow up, will this go through the month of October or to the beginning of October?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can go to the end of the month. I think what's going to really dictate how long the project is based on feedback. If there's some really positive feedback, then we can drag it to the end of October. If it's sensitive, it may be out in the end of September. Right? It all depends on what kind of feedback we get.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more speakers, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Abel, but it's getting late, guys, and we have 7 more items, so if we can... And I'll go over to Kate quickly. And we have closed sessions, so
Thank
make
you.
it snappy.
Appreciate it, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonovskis. Mr. Simonovskis, just to help clarify the timelines, on page 3 of your report, under the corridor street signage section, you state installed by mid-May pending council direction on proceeding with the pilot installation. Just so I understand, is the council direction to proceed or not happening tonight, or is it happening on the council report that comes on May 3rd?
Mr. Simonovskis, if you can clarify that.
Through you, Madam Chair, the motion is to, or the recommendation is to endorse or support this pilot period. So what I'm expecting tonight is that there's agreement that we're going to proceed with the pilot. If, and this is the part with public consultation, if there is resistance or lack of support for the program out of the feedback that we get from soliciting input, then we will come back with a recommendation saying there's other issues and either postpone the project or do something else.
Which is good. I'm glad to hear that there's a final opportunity. So in essence, we're approving in principle tonight, moving forward through this process and stuff, and that's great. I appreciate that. So then if I can have one request, and I think for myself, I think with any pilot program or project, I think it's important to be clear of what that intention is. I think you got to be clear on how you're going to evaluate that pilot program. I don't know how we're going to evaluate whether this pilot program is successful or not, but I think you need to have that at the outset, and I think also you need to have some information about what is the potential risk. I mean, and we've heard some of it is some of that traffic may flow out to the other streets. I think as a council, you want to be well informed about, what are we trying to achieve here? How are we going to evaluate it? And what's some of the potential outcomes of it? And one of it may be, flowing out onto other streets. And if that information can be part of that May 3rd report before final approval that'd be great, because I agree in principle that we need to do something with Yonge Street, and I'm willing to try it. But it's just the report itself, in my opinion, is lacking some of those essential pieces that clearly enunciate what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to evaluate it. So I think at some point it's got to come forward.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Those are sort of my comments. I made them sort of before I alluded to them, but we have to prepare people where their options are, what's coming ahead. And I think if Councillor Marakis has indicated that the pilot project for left-hand turns would be ready for March, I think we should put that in and get it moving first, rather than combine them both. I think we could get a little evaluation, ease it in, and then bring the other one in the summer in June. So not being aware of that, I would be in full support of moving that forward as a two-step rather than together.
Separately. Thank you, Councillor Abel. And back to Mayor Daw to wrap it up.
Thank you. I'm just wondering maybe from the discussion if I should put a motion to defer this to 2032, so we could have 16 years to discuss it, but I won't do that. I did talk to not all the businesses, but a number of the businesses, and they were all enthusiastic. And part of the plan, certainly in terms of public consultation, would be discussing it with all the businesses in that area. If anybody looks at Yonge Street at almost any time of the day, right now, it is a single lane in each direction because people park there. One of the issues is that people dodge in and out, so it creates an unsafe situation. That is one of the issues that was pointed out to me by the businesses in the area. As for bicycle lanes, no, that wasn't considered. There's no bicycle lanes there now. I really couldn't see putting bicycle lanes down Yonge Street anyways, quite frankly, because of the parking that's already there. I don't know how you would achieve that. So I don't think that that's something to worry about at this point. And with respect to a feasibility study, I can't think of a better feasibility study for something like that than actually doing a limited pilot to see what the actual effect is. So obviously, I'm going to support the recommendation.
Great, thank you so much. All right, everyone, we're going to vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we've
Madam
got...
Chair, is there anything that's time sensitive on the items that remain?
yes, there is. Mr. Clerk, if you can suggest which ones we should look at right away.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, subject to confirmation of my colleagues on the other side of the table, I do know that the item 7, actually, the N6 MOU and council lobbying framework is. Additionally, item 21, the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting is. And then from my perspective, also item 11 due to project impacts if we don't go for it. So subject to confirmation from my colleagues, those are.
8 and 9 as well, because they're procurement.
Okay, so we've just about all of them. Okay, let's move it quick, guys, really quick. Item number 7, pulled by Councillor Puri. Move.
Happy to move it right now.
Councillor Tom? Second it? Go ahead, Councillor Puri.
So my concerns were that I just wanted to get clarification and confirmation from Mr. Savanauskas that we are not limiting our ability to look into other means and mechanisms to collect garbage outside of this N6 initiative. It's my belief that if we were to move towards a bin system with the large bins, with an arm that comes out, picks them, dumps them into the back, it would save some money in some capacities. It would also lead to service improvements. If we remember a couple of years ago when we were collecting garbage and the weather was -20, a lot of people's garbage wasn't collected because it was too cold for individuals to go out and actually collect the garbage. So that was something we dealt with a lot. We dealt with a lot of complaints. We also dealt with a lot of complaints about recycling falling all over the street. Again, if we had bins in place that close shut to ensure that, those are my concerns. I just want confirmation. I'm not convinced that our system that we currently have is the best, and I want to make sure that this isn't limiting us in what we're looking at.
Mr. Simonauskas, if you can answer that for us.
Through you, Madam Chair, I have spoken with the councillor, and there will be a report coming forward to speak to those questions that were asked late last year. And then I'll be seeking council direction to either be part of the N6 cooperative or strike out with a different program that would accommodate some of these suggested goals.
Perfect, thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't support the recommendation. I mean, I believe we have a procurement process, a procurement bylaw review process, a review report coming out later this year. back in November, I put in a motion asking that the procurement process specifically relating to piggyback and sole source and single source procurement be reviewed so that it would have more transparency and disclosure. And it was stated at the time that we hold back on the motion given that we're going to have a procurement review process anyway. And part of that was that we have so many partnerships and with the other N6 communities and other things going on. Sorry? I thought it was kind of pretty straightforward, but the whole point of this is that I don't want to get into another partnership or renew this partnership when we still have a procurement policy still coming up. And isn't this what this is? It was advised in the November meeting that we don't want to have to hamstring ourselves because we don't know what legal or other downstream impacts it may have. So my recommendation or my feeling is that I want to go ahead with extending a partnership when we still have a procurement bylaw review coming on. Does that not make sense?
Thank you, Councillor Kim. If the clerk can speak to what this is intentions.
Yeah, thank you. Through Madam Clerk, the motion that Councillor Kim is referring to spoke specifically to piggybacking clauses under joint procurements, piggybacking, bridging off the province. This framework, first of all, what's before you does not commit the town to going into the cooperative, but this is just putting the pieces in place should the town, as Mr. Simonovsky, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired, mentioned, if we decide to go through, this would be a cooperative procurement, this would not be a piggybacking clause, this would be, the whole idea of the MOU is that the 6 municipalities, if they subsequently agree to adopt the contract, know exactly how they're going to operate together. It wouldn't be affected by that. The report that was requested back was merely on the implications of the piggybacking clauses, shared services under the procurement bylaw.
No, but that motion was also about disclosing just fully understanding the lead towns or municipalities procurement bylaw and what the fees were and so forth. So it's having Newmarket as the lead here. There were certain things that in this type of arrangement you won't have disclosure and transparency for, and that's why.
Yeah, Councillor, I think I know what I know where you're getting at, but I think that in this case, yeah, absolutely, it's your option to agree or not agree with this motion before us. I believe it's, excuse me, Mr. Clerk, if you could just try one more time the difference between what the motion is that Councillor Kim and what this intention is.
So, thank you. To you, Madam Chair. This motion will not commit us to the joint procurement. This is merely putting in a piece of the puzzle, so it does not affect, should council decide, as you suggest, based on the outcomes of that, to change the procurement process, this will not impact that decision. It won't be considered reconsideration. This is just a necessary, the northern 6 municipalities are putting together the various pieces of the puzzle necessary to go to market. That doesn't necessarily commit us, as was mentioned by the director, to actually adopting that at a later date.
So through you, Madam Chair, to the clerk then, so when does the existing arrangement end? Because it's hard to believe that we're just putting one piece of the puzzle unless we have plans to move forward. If we go step by step towards a cause, right?
Mr. Simonovsky, if you can answer.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the current contract expires September 1st, 2017. The plan, if all the N6 municipalities have council approval to proceed as a collective, is to issue a tender in the spring, May timeframe to allow for a decision to select a vendor by September of 2016, which gives that vendor a full 12 months to then buy trucks, equipment, identify facility locations, and get established for a turnover in September 2017. So we still have 3 months of discussion and fine-tuning and deciding. If council, for example, decides that they want to go on their own with a different program, then we would pull out of the N6 and there would be a rethink as to what the N6 becomes. So these are, they're happening at all the councils right now. There isn't any definitive direction with all of the partners as to which way we're going. I think the direction is that they see value in the group, but we're still feeling out, some of these issues.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. So just to summarize then, we're making a decision to get engaged, but we don't have to get married until October.
Well, we wouldn't have to get married until, say, May, when the RFP goes on the street, and then it'll say, is it 4, 5, or 6 partners?
So, I mean, whether you're making a decision to get engaged or married, you're going to the same path. And whether we agree with it now or agree with it later, it's still the same decision. It just means that we're not legally obligated at this point. So, I mean, it's still the same. I don't think I can, I don't think I can vote for the recommendation, but we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers to this issue? Councillor Abel and Councillor Garner.
Thank you,
Okay,
Madam
guys,
Chair.
remember,
I won't go into extended time. That'll be Councilor Maracas. After I'm done, thank you, Mr. Clerk. One of the greatest pressures we have in tax is increasing costs, and we have to look, and it's been identified, to go into agreements collectively. The N6, I think, saves us over $1 million a year in waste collection. By not moving forward in something that's well established and a good practice and saves taxpayers money, would put a serious pressure on tax increases to our residents, and we wouldn't be doing our job. Our job is to do the most efficient, and we have learned that partnering with other municipalities, whether it's insurance or waste collection, and there are other ways that we do partner. The Central York Fires is another great example. They are a little different in procurement, but there are, it is a good practice the way we do it. It's all legal, and I'm very comfortable entering these. In fact, I'm in full support of moving forward in the N6 agreement. It is well established and saves us a lot of money, and we get the best price and the best value. So I'm not going to try and correct the grammar and oppose this sort of procedure. I'm perhaps for Councillor Kim, he might want to get a little more information so he's comfortable with it, but I don't want to give the impression to anyone that we're doing something that is risky. What we're doing is working in efficiency and saving taxpayers money and giving good value for service. And we start by giving a mutual of understanding that we are in the collective or we are in the group, and one person has to go forward, and it's been Newmarket. Newmarket does it for our Central York Fire. They do the administration and budget. So, and this is how we proceed with all the pressures that we have. If we were to go out and get single RFPs, we would be blown out of the water, and we would miss our opportunity. So I'm in full support. I'm very comfortable with the way it's written.
thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Maracas? And I think I need someone to, Councillor Pierre, Councillor Tom, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Maracas.
Thank you. I didn't realize I put up my hand to speak. Yeah, no.
Apologize, I thought you did.
I'll speak if you like me to, but.
No, I don't, but
Okay.
I like, but no, if you don't have, no.
I'll just I'm fine with what's in front of me. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought I saw your hand up, my apologies. That's it, Councillor Perry, and then Councillor Kim.
And again, just to be brief, the reason that I would like to see us move in a different direction is because if you look at the N6 as a whole, there are different densities.
Point of order,
across-
Madam Clerk. We're not speaking to the motion.
If it was all right for everybody else to, I just wanted to clarify.
Madam Clerk, Madam Chair, please rule.
Please speak to the motion, Councillor Perry. We always follow the rules.
Unless I break them. Very quickly, I'll do my best to make sure it falls within line. The reason I want to make sure that we have the option of breaking the MOU and doing something on our own is because there are separate densities across the northern 6 municipalities. Newmarket and Aurora are definitely dense enough to support a different collection system. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
This will take 20 seconds, if that. I'm not adverse to the N6 partnership. Indeed, it will likely save us in the long term. But for me, it's more about the process. And I think when you have this partnership and you have one person taking the lead, there is a certain level of disclosure and transparency that is missed. And that's the point. And I would much rather join with and go with this MOU with a partnership after we've conducted our staff procurement process review. However, if we have to do it now or we're stuck out, then I'm all for moving forward. But that's my point, is I'd rather have the report first and then go ahead with the N6.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. And I believe Councillor Gartner and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could some member of staff say when the procurement review is going to be brought back to council?
I'm sorry, that's not part of this motion. I'm sorry, Councillor Gartner. It's just a long night, and we got 5 more items. If someone staff can send us a note about that, that'd be great.
Okay. A councillor at the table has a concern, and I think it should be addressed with respect to when we will be able to address it as the council. The second thing, through you to Mr. Simonovskis. Mr. Simonovskis, when we discussed this last year, there were a lot of different points of view and concerns. So I'm not sure what you said previously tonight. You said that you'll be bringing something back to us to address those?
Correct.
And that has no impact on the MOU at all?
Through you, Madam Chair, no.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Just briefly, through you to Mr. Simonovskis. In the report, it states that Newmarket will be issuing the tender documents on behalf of the N6 for the RFP process. Between tonight's approval of this motion and that tendering, will you be bringing back further reports with regards to this whole process?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. There'll be one report speaking to the questions that were raised by Council on some of those issues, such as the servicing changes. And my hope is at that point in time, there'll be some clarity with Council as to which direction they want to head, and then we will then inform the N6 whether we're part of the partnership or not.
Perfect.
Okay, excellent. That's it. No further comment. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8. Councillor Kim, please.
We've done it before.
Councillor Kim? Councillor Perry, second that motion. If you go ahead, Councillor Kim. If you want to put your mic on, that'd be great too.
Yes, just through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Simonovskis. It seems like the increase for the light maintenance and from increased by 140,000 for street light maintenance, and then the next paragraph for an increase of another 70,000. Given that we've only passed the 2016 budget a few weeks ago, I'm just wondering why these items are not mentioned during the budget process.
Mr. Damascus, if you can.
Certainly through you, Madam Chair. So these costs are actually related to services delivered in 2015, and we're looking for approval to close the 2015 accounts. And as mentioned in the report, we identified a high volume of locates, which is part of our contract services, and we had actually applied some lean review to that escalating cost. And unfortunately, it takes time to actually make change, but the goal is to go from a contracted locate service to an in-house service. We've purchased locate equipment, we've started training staff to be able to do that work in-house, and our plan is to minimize those costs for 2016. This report, and I apologize for the timing of this report, we did have some staff changes late in the year. This report really should have come to council probably in September, October, and that's my apology.
Yeah, that was my only beef. I think there would have been, I mean, some of these costs could have been predicted or projected in advance. So, I mean, that's water under the bridge, so, you know, perhaps next year, you know, we could look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abel and Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 2 of the report, increased construction activity has resulted in high volumes and locate requests. You make no mention of locate requests that were for the Canada Post mailboxes. Were they part of costs that we assumed?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, they would have been part of our services as well.
Darn, Post.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. On page 3 of the report, under financial implications,
Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
third page of the report under financial implications, last paragraph. The increase can be accommodated within the 2015 operating budget as it is offset with savings in our winter maintenance costs. They've been very low. They were very low in 2015. It is recommended that 50% of this increase be funded from the engineering fees reserve. That makes sense. I would like to say in past when we've had, when we've been able to save on winter costs, that savings goes into the reserve so that when we have years when we have horrendous costs, like we did 2 years ago, we have a cushion in the reserve. So, well, I think any cost that we save in winter reserve should go back into winter reserves, and we should find the money elsewhere.
Thank you. And Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to get too much into the Canada Post part, but, you know, Councillor Abel did bring it up, and so I will kind of speak to it. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Simonovskis, or maybe to our legal counsel, with the agreement that we signed, does it not state that they pay for this type of activity?
Thank you. Mr. Simonovskis.
Through you, Madam Chair, there was a fee related to the review and implementation of their services, so that would be contributing to our departmental revenues. But specifically, they weren't broken out into various areas. I mean, there was a cost for us both for staff hours as well as contract services to fulfill our obligations.
I guess just one follow-up. So did that fee that they paid us, did it cover what the services that we provided for them?
Through you, Madam Chair, for the most part, yes, because it was a very quick process, so it wasn't a lot of time involved in dealing with them.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments or questions? I just want to say I love the new lights. They are incredibly bright and do a great job. I can't believe the difference on our street, so I just wanted to comment. Call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 9, pulled by Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. We've discussed this before. I'm just wondering on the
How are you moving? I'm sorry, how are you
moving
moving?
as is.
Councillor Marcus, go ahead.
Just wondering on the timing on this and how long it will take, and will the pool be shut down
Mr. Simonovskis.
for you?
Through you, Madam Chair, the timing will be early spring. The shutdown would be probably an afternoon, but we're not actually planning on closing the pool. It's all roof work, so it won't affect the operation.
Great, thanks.
Any other comments? Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, did we not address the need to replace this when we were renovating or doing the AFLC some years ago? I think Mr. Downey brought it to our attention for consideration.
Thank you. Through
Was it this piece of equipment?
Mr. Samaskis?
No.
Through you, Madam
comment?
Chair, not that I'm aware of, this equipment was decommissioned during the renovations, and we went to restart it. There was some issues with the equipment because it was already old, and because it had sat unoperating for the year.
She seized.
Yeah, it was a pretty high investment to get it going again.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Marcus, super quick.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just one quick one, kind of on the same lines as Councillor Abel. I believe it wasn't there something with the issue with the ice rink, humidification system? Is that the one that we dealt with already, or are we looking at it through?
Through Madam Chair, I had to check. We have capital projects for various components of this facility. This one is only critical because of the impact to the humidity within the pool area. So the ice rink, we did some repairs as well last year, so there are some elements that we did upgrade, but I know there's still some outstanding components that we have to bring forward at some point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Around the table, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 11, pulled by Councillor Gartner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move as is.
Thank you. May I have a seconder for that? Councillor Peary? Go ahead, Councillor Gartner.
Item 11, page 12, I'm telling myself. Under the policy statements, the third one down, the cost and effort of RIM activities must be consistent with the value of the records themselves and the relative benefits. So through you, Madam Chair, either, you're jumping to answer this. How do we evaluate the value?
Mr. Clerk, would you mind responding to that?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, if I might just ask the councillor, which point again, the policy statements?
5.0, the third
Yes.
one down.
The third one down. Oh, the cost and effort. Through Madam Chair, we evaluate that in several ways. We talk about, that speaks to how long we maintain records for. So, do we store a record for 20 years when the value of the information is really only 10 years? We do that by determining, how much storage we'll provide for electronic records. There's a range of options. It's a policy statement. It's a guiding principle for us that we always do that sort of cost-benefit analysis. Like, do you keep something for 100 years versus 50 years? Is there real value there?
Thank you. And at the top of the page, so this relates to councillors, the municipal freedom of information, talking about council records. So if a resident emails us about an issue, that's fine. But if we send that email on to the rest of council, then that becomes the property of the town?
Madam Chair?
I'm not, if you could, the top, the
Yes.
first and
Yes, I
second
know.
note.
Yes, no. It's thank you, and Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair. That's it's a question about custody and control of records. You are correct that if you just receive an email from the resident, that would be considered under MFIPA a constituent record. However, the moment you forward that to all of council, especially because it includes the mayor, who is considered an officer and employee under MFIPA, yes, it becomes a in the hands of the mayor. It becomes a corporate town record under MFIPA, or if you forward an email to staff, in the hands of staff, it becomes a town record. That doesn't necessarily mean that your individual response to them is. It's in the hands of the town. It's considered a corporate record under MFIPA.
Thank you. And the second note, records of a councillor relating to the business of council. So all of these notes that I'm scribbling right now, or that I'm sharing with a fellow councillor?
No, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. No, in fact, I would consider your handwritten notes of your issues here, or even if you're showing it to one member of council, that's still, in my mind, not a custody. not in the custody or control of the corporation. It would be considered a constituent record because you have made those notes to ask questions in a representative capacity.
Thank you. And the notes that are being made here by various councillors are okay?
They are, because they're their individual notes on a matter. They are not something that's been adopted by all of council. Having that note does not direct staff or change the
Thank you.
corporation.
And what if this tablet, laptop, whatever was the property of the town issued to councillors? That could be for another day, because we don't
Yes,
have
that one would definitely be
Okay.
for another day, because sort of the rules around that are a lot more complicated.
Okay, we're not there yet. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. We're getting there. A couple more. We have the item number 18, pulled by Councillor Gardner, the TAC minutes. Councillor Gardner?
Yeah, 14, sorry.
My apologies, 14.
It's 21.
Okay, let's go. Is that everyone? Okay, 21. I'll move to 21. Perfect. Seconded. Councillor, all in favor to move the item forward? Passes. Councillor Gardner, you moved item number 21.
I'll move as is. Why is this a time-sensitive matter?
Can we have a seconder? Councillor Pierre, go ahead. Councillor Clerk, can you tell us why?
Thank you. It's
time-sensitive?
the timeframes for the demolition permits.
Okay, Councillor Gardner?
I wanted to speak to something else on this, so perhaps for next week. So I'm not sure what I should do. I can speak to it now if you'd like.
Go
Yes.
ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Okay, page 4, matters for consideration. We were talking, second paragraph, we were talking about the sign associated with Dr. Moore's chiropractic clinic on Yonge Street. And I know that economic development, the Economic Development Advisory Committee didn't have any concerns with the signs that Dr. Moore wanted to put on Yonge Street. Just would like council to note that some of the concerns that the Heritage Committee expressed were regarding the number of signs in the property, the size of the proposed wall sign, the size of the variance, and the fact that granting this sign would set a precedent. And I think those are all very important points, and I wanted to bring them to councilors' attention.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other comments? Seeing none? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have a few more moments before we need to go into closed session, so if I try to clear off the rest.
We do?
We have closed session.
Why do we have a few more minutes?
Madam Chair, is it not possible to deal with closed session next week, since whatever we decide tonight will has to be ratified next week anyways?
Just a moment. It's just being discussed right now by CAO and
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, you're right, you're right. You're right.
I understand, but, so what are we gonna do next week?
We're going to start at 6. We're going to start at 6, and we're going to do the same thing, and you know why? Because we had a month off.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notices of motion that will be on the floor next week.
I'm just saying that, I mean.
Plus, people are gonna pull all this stuff again. Plus, we're gonna have this closed session, plus next week's closed session. We have a special closed session too.
What do you want to go through tonight?
I know, I get that. I'm just
Oh,
saying,
yeah,
what's gonna
so,
happen next week?
so listen.
How long do you think it'll take to deal with Cornette?
I don't think too long, it's just, I don't think it's saying, it's saying.
That's fine, I'll stay.
Is it worth having a month off to be in this situation again?
Exactly, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna push stuff off next week.
I know, and
Every time we take a break, we get slammed.
No, I know.
What we could do
Yeah, but we approved it for ourselves. That's what my son said, but you approved it for yourself.
Okay, everyone, here's our decision. We only have a recommendation based on a vote. We have 2 items left in open session, item 18 and 19, and 14, 18, and 19. There's 3 items left. If we can move these to council for next week to discuss an open session and move into closed session immediately after the vote. All in favor? Oh. Hang on. Who's the mover and seconder?
You just asked.
Councillor Thompson moved. Tom, a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
No, right now you need a motion to go into closed session following adjournment. We have to.
So I need a motion. Councillor Tom, Councillor Perry, all in favor to go into closed session? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Maracas, all in favor? Sorry.